Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Hosted Bar. This is the week where Dawn and I get to have a guest. And so, first, let's start with Dawn. What are you drinking? And then please introduce our guest because you always know what makes people so special. So we can have you tell us why Amy's here.
Sure. Of course, as Norman just woke up and barked. I am drinking a Malbec today. It sounded tasty. So, anyways, and then we have Amy on the show. I'm really excited. So I kind of giggle because her and I kind of met on the internet, but not really. I mean, via LinkedIn, by the way.
Yeah, that sounded a little like dating.
It did. Sorry. Messaging back and forth, and then I switched careers, but we never had a chance to really connect. And then we met in the parking garage after a Madison Professional Women's Night, and right there we kind of kicked it off. And since then we've kept in contact. Amy always sends me amazing articles and pushes me to inspire me, so I'm so thrilled. And we have so many weird connections with different little things that I'm like, see, there was a reason we were supposed to meet. So
Dawn comes up everywhere in my life now, which is not a bad thing, but it's true.
So Amy, why don't you tell us what you are drinking, because you have a very cool thing, and then a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I have here in my grandma's Art Deco like vintage glass. So, but in it, I have my color coded. This is a key lime cheesecake pastry sour from a brewery in Northern Illinois. This was gifted to me by a friend that thought I would like it. And I would say, don't drink too much of it. It's pretty sweet, but it's actually really good. So awesome. Recommend.
Yum. So Amy, we've established that you have good taste in beer, you can color coordinate, and you have good conversations in parking garages.
Yes.
But what is your like, well, let's start with an easy one. What's your job? What do you do for a living?
Yeah, so I am a few months into running my own business. And so I have two companies. So one is my own consulting company, and I started that first, and that is I consult on process improvement and lean concepts. I currently have one client there, so I'll tell you more about that. But then I decided that I wanted to be bigger than just me, so I purchased a consulting franchise. So I am part of a franchise organization called Valenta, and that's where I spend more of my time. And we are a consulting firm with a suite of services for small to mid-sized businesses. So the list of things that I can help you with is pretty extensive, but really it's looking at where are your pain points digitally, process-wise, people-wise, and helping to fill those gaps with a list of things that I can help you with.
Awesome. So before I start peppering you with 1,000 questions, I'll go with, I have a dry Riesling because of course the best way to pick wine is to find a cute label.
Yes, or a colored bottle.
Right. I double, but this is actually Water Lilies from Out of the Woods Winery from Hayward, Wisconsin. Oh. And you'd think like Hayward, it's up in the North Woods. You're like, oh, really? And when we were there, we had a thing and we were like, and we got a glass and we're like, all right, ready? Because like, what was this? And literally Jeff and I both took a sip of the wine and went, this doesn't suck. So it's wine from the North Woods of Wisconsin. That's good. Now this, I'm not sure Riesling is never all that dry, so it definitely is still in that sweet, but it is still not that cloying that you can get. Yeah. So if you are find yourself in the North Woods in musky days, which is when we were there, was muskellunge.
Oh yeah,
Hayward, go to Out of the Woods Winery, and the wine is actually good wine in the North Woods. Who knew?
That is good to know.
To bring the bottle. I didn't bring my bottle.
Label with the color bottle, so we're all good.
Yeah.
So Amy, you talked a little bit about how you started this and how that, but one thing that you kind of missed that Dawn had pointed out is you had previously been working for, before you started the business, your business, you had been working for another company, and I think you asked them to lay you off.
I did. I
And
did.
so I want to explore that a little bit, because you always like, people often talk about career paths like it's from like some 1950s TV sitcom, right? You get your degree, you get a job directly relevant to that degree, you stay at this company, you might make a strategic change, but it's, you know, it's all very straightforward. And then you retire with, you know, and you get promoted normally, you retire, or you choose to leave in, you know, some grand TV scene. And I don't think anyone does that anymore. But I certainly, one thing that they don't do often is say, you know what, lay me off.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that, kind of your career path, and how maybe it looked more like chutes and ladders than a sidewalk, and how you get to the point where you actually ask your company, no, let's part ways, but I'll take your package.
That's right. Yeah. I actually feel very lucky that I was able to do that. But I think to really explain how I got there to that moment, I have to go back. So 5 years ago, we maybe wouldn't even have had this conversation, but if we did, I would be that first person, someone who got a degree, started at a company, got promoted. I took a lot of like side steps and worked in various departments, but I was with the same company for 20 years. And so
you were the 1950s sitcom.
I was the 50s sitcom, and very unique, it turns out, you know, among my peers. Um, I had some life things happen, and it was to my husband at that time. So 2018 was a very strange year for us. My husband was in his 30s. First, he had a stroke, and then he had his kidney fail and had his kidney removed. And then during all of that, they said, you have something right here. You should get that checked out. And it turned out to be aggressive thyroid cancer. And so he had two surgeries to remove
You know,
one half
so
and the other.
no stress.
It was
Yeah.
surreal, and it does make you take a really hard look at what life is and what's important to you. And I was all about work, worked a lot of hours, thought it was so important, really trying to continue to climb the ladder. And I recognized that there's more, and I wanted more time to be out in the community to help. I was volunteering with a dog rescue, and I actually at that point started volunteering with the American Heart Association because of the stroke, for my husband. But I quit my job at Covance, which is a local company here in Madison that I had been at for just over 20 years. So I think that the decision point was while I was out on leave with my husband. I asked for a week off, and I was getting calls and getting emails and, can you please just do this and just do that? And being me, I was like, yeah, okay, yeah. And then in hindsight, I thought that everything about that was wrong. And so it was wrong for me, it was wrong for the company, and I decided I want to do something new. So I went to another company, and they're another local company, Exact Sciences, great company. I had really good experiences there. I was there about 4 years, and I started to have similar feelings. And I think because I had done it once, it wasn't as scary. But I was on the planning committee for the layoffs. So I had a lot of lead time to know that this was coming. Here's how it's going to work. I was helping the leadership decide what the packages were going to be. And it started to sound pretty good. It started to sound like some time, a gift of time to clear my head and decide, why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel like it's taking too much of me? I can't spend time on my volunteer stuff. And so I let my husband know I'm gonna tell them tomorrow. There was a deadline, and they said yes. So it gave me, some paid time to think. And that's actually when I ran into Dawn. I was in this self-reflection, what the heck am I going to do time. I took about 4 months of nothing to just really self-reflect, spend some time, clean the closets, do whatever I felt was really mentally in my way. And that's kind of how I decided working for myself was pretty exciting. And other people I talked to a few people and they said, you just light up when you talk about it. And these other options, you're just telling me. I didn't really recognize that, but it was said to me a few times. So,
right. So you're like, maybe they're seeing something.
yeah. And I think they did. They were right because it's early. I'm not, making lots of money, but that doesn't matter. Every day I acknowledge another small thing that is so different and right with fits with my, maintaining my mental health, maintaining my physical health. Just, I went and had a massage this morning, and I would never do that during the workday in my whole career,
Life, right?
ever.
Yeah.
But this morning I could do it without guilt.
I didn't even know all that stuff about your husband
Oh,
either.
yeah.
No,
Yeah, I
didn't know.
guess I didn't share. I had my own personal
You had
issue
your own
too.
stuff. I'm like, wait, what? Wait, did
Yeah,
I
so
listen wrong before? I'm like confused, but please, yes.
so I didn't go into, but I had a very supportive company with Exact Sciences. And in 2020, when everything shut down, I also learned I had lymphoma. And so
There just wasn't enough going on in your life.
now it was my turn, 2 years later, my
You were
husband took
feeling a
his
little
turn.
left out.
Yeah, I thought I need to join this club. And so I was diagnosed in January of 2020. I started treatment in February and the world shut down in March. And so I finished my treatment through, lockdown. It was very unique time to be going into for cancer treatment. But then it just didn't quite come back together. When we came back to the office occasionally, like I started to have those feelings again. And that was driving that like second round of I'm anxious, I gotta go.
So a couple of things that I'm hearing is one, you had some big life events. And we've had a couple of different people come on and talk about this, how those big life events it cause you to reevaluate and shift. And a lot of people had that during the pandemic, right? Because that was a big life event to all of us. You had a preview of that a couple of years earlier. And so with that, the second thing I'm hearing is the way that you frame it. Some people talk about it forced me to do it, and you're like, I had the opportunity to. And so I think that's really kind of interesting and telling on how you've been approaching this. So talk about a little bit about how you could see these things that many people would not describe as an opportunity to reevaluate, and how you kind of took that as an opportunity and decide, you know what, I need more risk in my life. I need less stability.
That's right. Well, I would say just, Erin and Dawn, if there was a way to sort of bottle up that life evaluation, it not wrapped up in something so emotional and, scary, but just to like, I would sign up for that. Like, there are moments you need to just be like, is this as important as I'm making it? Do I care as much as I think I do about this? All those things. And so it was a little bit of a gift. I'm healthy now, so I feel like that gift was given to me. Like Amy hit the brakes again and time to rethink it. I think that it's other people don't have that and they go all the way to retirement and follow the 50s plan where maybe the last 2 decades or whatever they were pretty unhappy. And I feel like I didn't answer part of your question. What did I miss?
No, I think you did. So part of it is recognizing what you're feeling and looking for one, recognizing the feeling, I'm unhappy. Two, recognize where that unhappiness intention is coming from. And three, being able to say, I'm going to do something about it. I think a lot of people who are locked into that, this is how it is, and I'm going to spend the next 2 decades turning the crank, is because they feel they have no choice.
Yeah, I've never believed that. I'm probably a pretty high on the risk profile. When you talk to me, you might not think I seem pretty traditional, but I apparently surprise people here and there. Like, let's go skydiving, or just in general, it's people who know me well, it fit. I think people who didn't thought, what the heck is she doing?
So it's a little bit of self-awareness and self-knowledge.
Yeah, but what really is stability? I was planning layoffs. It was the third one. So it was more actually control. I was maybe going to be on the list someday anyway. I watched a friend go through it, a former host of yours. It was really traumatic, or a guest of yours, or of Dawn's, I guess she was on the other. It was traumatic for her emotionally. And I had a few months window into that, what that was like and how she processed that. And it could have been anybody. It could have been me. It could have been her. I was actually formerly on her team and would have been one of them. So I just felt like this was less risky and more control, more ownership.
All right. I think that's an interesting way. Again, I love how I think so much of life is how you choose to look at things.
I agree with that.
And how you choose, right? A lot of people would think of layoffs and being that is lack of control, and going into doing this your own is lack of control. But you're like, no, I actually have more ability to shape. I think that is a way that a lot of entrepreneurs look at life, but I think it also separates the difference between the entrepreneurs and the people who are going for the retirement watch.
Well, so it's funny you mentioned that, Erin. I met Dawn. I met several other people. I found my community. I found my people, which maybe would have been what I was missing. I couldn't always put my finger on why I didn't feel quite right, but I found this group of people that are taking the risks, jumping in, trying things differently from one day to the next. And I love that. I love that. That's, my core offering to my customers is looking at something in a new way and making it better, efficiency. And so it fits me.
So you had your consulting. Sorry, Dawn, at some point I will actually let you talk.
No, she looks like so very smiley.
You had your consulting company on your own, and then you said, you know what, this franchise looks interesting. So you're dipping your toe back into bigger, but in a different way. So kind of how do you decide I'm ready to be self-employed, and how do you decide self-employed with something else, or talk with me a little bit about.
So my former roles at my previous companies, I was not the strategist. I wasn't choosing all the paths forward, and I wasn't the business development engine. And so those two things really feel like pretty big gaps in my personal world. I can work hard, I can get things done, but having to choose the right path and how to get business and all of that felt very daunting. So the franchise, while it's not perfect, it's not a perfect delivery of here's everything.
So few companies are perfect. I mean, our 3 companies are the exception. We're all right. We're all
of course,
perfect,
but it was a framework and somebody to talk to and bounce things off of. I felt that when I was talking to Donna at times, it's like you need someone. And in this case, the franchise, it was someone who'd done exactly what I've done, and then another person who's done it. And I got lots of perspectives, but I was still making my own choices. I still choose my own fate. The nice thing about the franchise I bought into is they're a startup franchise. A lot of their systems are not locked. They are building as we fly. I get a lot of influence and input into how we do things. Even better. That's still it just kind of
your entrepreneurship, right? A lot of people
it just came together.
Right? Oh, they're still building.
I'm in.
Right, I'm in, as opposed to like, maybe I'll give it a time.
Yeah, I think another personality would say, I'm going to wait till you get that figured out. But I thought, oh, how exciting. I get to be part of that.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you get to, find the gifts in all of this. This is where I just kind of going back to like, you found the gift in cancer, of course, is not a great gift, but I'm just saying, like, you found the gift in it. You got to have a different perspective. You got to see what life was like, how it's short, how we need to really fully like live it. But I just love how you saw the opportunity in different ways of how I'm going to take the leap. I'm going to try this journey. I'm going to see where this goes. And you know what I mean? Like, that's the part that I loved about it. And so thankful we met, because you're just taking action. And I think that's the part too of like, you found the gift in so many things, but you're taking action and not stewing over some of the weird gifts you've had in life.
Yeah. I will tell you one more thing, and I don't know, Dawn, if I've shared this, but I had one more gift, and I'm sure I'll have more, that really propelled my decisions. And so it was a friend of mine reached out that I hadn't seen in a while, wanted to have drinks. We had some wine, and turns out her husband was shutting down his consulting business in the same area that I work. And he passed his main client to me. And I'm working with former colleagues from my last job, so they know me. And that's what I'm doing with my own consulting business. I have this pretty steady client. It's a cannabis testing lab. They have 6 locations. I get to use my lean background, my lab background, my, food testing background. And it was like, oh, this was meant to be. I don't know how this happened, but, drinks with a friend became a business launch.
So, right, I think this goes to a lot of what you do, Dawn, is creating opportunity for providence to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Like, there's a story that it's kind of a story joke that I love, that there was this old Italian man who would go up to the statue of the town saint every day and say, please, please, please let me win the lottery. Please let me win the lottery. And every day he would do it, because he was destitute and wanting this. And of course, every day he would have to come back because he hadn't won the lottery. Mm-hmm. And so finally one day, please, 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 dear saint, let me win the lottery. The statue comes alive and said, please, 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 dear man, buy a lottery ticket.
You have to
right?
You pay
to play. You can't win the lottery if you never buy the ticket. You have to create that opportunity for good things to happen. And I think this is one thing that you work a lot with, Dawn, is people creating those opportunities for the lottery to happen.
So I have a quick story, Dawn, from something you started that you don't know yet. It's still in progress. Dawn does what she is amazing at and said, you two should meet. And she introduced me to someone who I met, and we're going to be great friends. But what's interesting is, again, the spouse, her husband's work complements what I do perfectly, and we intend to start a partnership. So they're on vacation, but we have some conversations that we will be having. But it was like, it couldn't have been more perfect of a situation. We both were getting excited, and I was like, thanks, Dawn, high five. She doesn't know this yet.
Well, I love being the catalyst, because that's the one thing I've found, even as I sit and reflect, even since the beginning of the year, even it's kind of interesting, but a couple of the guests on my other podcasts, I even asked them, are you sure you're doing what you really love doing? And I asked them a few questions, and shortly after, they launched their own business. So they partnered with their
People
spouse.
are going to be scared if their employees start coming on to Destined to Succeed.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. There you go. And that's where I'm like, but I know it's not just me, but I'm like, if you can be that little catalyst for somebody, because you don't know what it could, like what the return could be. And that's where it's like introductions for me, or being a resource and helping people to connect, because you don't know what could be creative out of
Yeah.
it, and so like that. I love that. And that's
Well,
where too, you can find the
I shared
opportunity.
I shared that other people would tell me I lit up when I described the
Yeah.
opportunity. It's very important or impactful if someone sees something that you're already feeling, but you don't think you're showing it. And so, the example you gave, it's like you just pointed out what they already knew, but the fact that you could see it just means so much. It's like, okay, I
And,
can validate what I'm thinking, which is
and
what happened for me.
right. I think this goes back to know thyself, knowing what it is. And what you were saying is you took the time to say, this is what I am, this is what it is this feeding me, is this serving me, is this, I got the same feeling again. And I think that's what Don, you're saying, is you're asking, like, Amy was able to ask herself those questions, and then you were asking them, and they started doing that self-evaluation, and it's okay, where am I at, how am I on this, and seeing it as kind of causing them to reframe.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's the thing too, it's sometimes hard to see ourselves, but like everybody else can see it sometimes. And then finally something clicks when one person points it out, even though you've probably heard it 20 million times, but you just like finally realize yourself, this is what I need, even though everybody else has been seeing it the whole time.
That's right.
But you need to commit yourself, so.
Right. I had a job one time where I had started a new job, and I was maybe, I don't know, a few months in. And I had a friend call and ask, oh, how's it going? And I went, and she said, stop right there. And I'm like, what? And she's like, you were a few months in, you're still in your honeymoon period. And if you're in your honeymoon period making that sound at that question, this is not for you. And so this goes to kind of to answer one of the questions I asked you. How did you decide when you're ready to be self-employed? That was the one that I was like, oh, right.
You lived it, right? You
right.
saw a cue that you didn't even like process, but someone else did.
Right. That ability for them to mirror me, like, wait a minute, why are you going in your honeymoon? I'm like, maybe, but I think this goes to your thing too. I've been looking at it kind of previously. I don't know many people who decide to jump into start a business, whether it's self-employed or starting a business overnight. Right? This was not like you woke up one day and you're like, you know what? Let's chuck it off.
I'm out.
So
I will tell you though, so when I decided to leave, I put a post on LinkedIn, and I didn't say anything bad. I just said I have come to the decision that myself and my employer are working towards separate goals, something like that. I put a meme picture that said, remember the last time you were excited to go to work? And then it said, me neither. That post got 2 million views.
Oh, look at you.
And I had people coming from all over not like a ton, but maybe like 10 people reaching out saying, you just spoke my language and I've been feeling that way. And I really learned through that was a nerve. I had a nerve, that's kind of pervasive, but I almost took it down because I thought, what did I do? So my friends,
mad at your firm, like you said, the company was good. They're full of good people. It just wasn't your path.
Yeah, my husband still works there. I can't really say, they pay my health insurance. But my friends call it my Jerry Maguire moment. They said I was holding the fish tank saying, who's coming with me? I thought that was funny.
I think that your point though is good, that you don't, so part of Jerry Maguire is he was like, I don't like anything about this. But I think yours wasn't necessarily that. It was just your goals and my goals are no longer aligned. And that's okay. You can be good and I can be good going different directions.
Yeah, I would agree. That's how it went.
And so given that your husband's still there, that had to have been interesting conversations, right? So you were saying this was a kind of, it wasn't overnight, it was discussion. So what were some of the thought processes that you had going through, or was it so with us it was more like not if but how?
Yeah. Like,
was it more if, or was it more how, or was it kind of
yes? It was how long can we last if I don't have income? How comfortable are we? Will he feel trapped? Will I all of a sudden trap my husband into something he doesn't enjoy? He loves it. So, but it was mutual discussion about the space that I was going to need to get to where I wanted to get to. Now I have an amazingly supportive husband. Like a month in, he threw me a surprise business launch party, which was so surprising. And the people there was amazing. But I did ask all those questions. I know how I am going to be, but how are you going to be? And we need to do this. Totally.
I think you hit two nerves that, Dawn, I'd like to hear your thing too, is that we went through is one, insurance is good, right? And so we want to keep it, but
especially if you have 2 cancer survivors in the family.
And so am I locking you into that 50s thing, and trapping you in places, and then the ultimate thing is that ability to, if you have a partner, have a supportive partner. And so, Dawn, so first of all, do you find it fun that you were the mentor in this one? You were started out before her, so you were like, oh, I'm just figuring this out, but you were the the person ahead of the path this time.
Yeah, she jumped off first.
I don't think about by much, but I think that was too, of like lots of discussions at night, and a lot of even where my role was progressing in a different way, and I just was like, my heart isn't in this, and I was always thinking I wanted to help him get a different job, but in the end I think I was just saying that when I was the one that needed, you know what I mean, like you're almost coming up with other excuses for other people, but it was like deep down maybe I guess it was me.
Well, I think part of that is you're probably giving yourself another task, so that a diversion. It's like, well, if I help you get a job, then I don't have to focus on what I'm feeling. Right.
Knowing thyself again.
I know I do that.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's just that whole really thinking of it like, well, what if I fail? And I think that's even been a different thing for me too, of like changing that frame and thinking like it's not a fail, it's I'm learning from that. This experience I'm gaining from this, and where am I going? And I think that's where it's just some different things in corporate you couldn't always evolve and learn from it. It was always kind of, I don't know, it was stressful. And this is too where I think Amy, your health probably is a lot, like for me, I'm like, I feel so much healthier now of just the less stress. It's a different stress.
It's different.
But I'm working for me now. And I don't know, that's where it's just for different feelings for me.
I was just talking to a friend of mine that we were talking about pick your hard.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, I like that. You said something, Dawn, that's interesting. You said, what if I fail? And I don't think I've ever asked myself that. And I don't want to say it because I don't think I could fail, or I might not fail, but I've just asked, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
And to me, that feels different. It's like, what's the worst that could happen? Well, I go back and get a job, or, I don't know that, or I stay unemployed. Yeah. Like, what's the worst that could happen? And going through that mental exercise jointly really made it easier. But I guess I've never really framed it in what if I fail. Maybe I'm more careful mentally not to put those words in my vocabulary.
But also that risk tolerance, right? The higher your risk tolerance, the more you're like, well, I don't know, fail, whatever. So first, one funny thing is I've heard is FAIL stands for first attempt in learning.
Oh, nice. I like it.
But that what's the worst can happen? I had another business owner who, when I first started, and I was kind of like, and he's like, when I started, I asked myself that, and I didn't just ask myself, I answered it. And I answered it in, okay, literally, what is the worst thing that can happen? And his was like, I had done, his thing had some capital intensive things. And he's like, I had a personal guarantee on my loan.
Yeah.
So literally the worst thing that could happen is my business fails. I can't pay off my loan. I have to sell our home.
Yeah, I have to move.
And he goes, and that's not good. But it's really not that bad. He's like, the catastrophes that I had come up with were worse, right? I could get cancer. He's like, no, I like cancer and this are different things.
Yeah.
The worst that could actually happen with this is I sell my home. And he's like, I like my home. I don't want to sell it. But if that's the worst thing that happens, is exactly what you said, I have to go back to a job. And I have to do it. And so I really took that to heart. And the fact is, don't just ask it, but answer it. Because you realize the worst that can happen is generally less bad than your pretend. And I was talking to my brother-in-law when he was looking at something about quitting his job, and he's a farmer. He loves to farm. So when he was really debating whether or not whether or not he should quit his job and farm full time, I said, what's the worst case scenario? And he's like, well, that I have to come back and work. I go, so you are literally living your worst case scenario. You go, oh, well, you put it like that.
Right. That's kind of how I thought about it. The worst that could happen is I'm going to end up right back here.
Right. You're in your worst. So everywhere is up from here. I think this goes back to your framing. Why you're so unique is that you have that ability to ask questions yourself and look at it and frame it differently.
Yeah. I didn't realize I look at things differently, but I'll tell you, the coach that I worked with, the franchise coach, that kind of walked me through what's important to me and which franchises might be a good match. I just met with him and he said, he's like, you are the model client. He's like, I'm nominating you for client of the year. He's like, the way you think about things, the way you do things. And I'm just looking at him like, what? He's like, I have to tell my other clients to keep an open mind. I guess I just didn't even realize or hadn't really thought about it. Those type of conversations don't always happen in the corporate world. You just do your thing.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of times you ask someone what's your worst attributes and people can rattle off, 10 things out. You ask, what are your best? And people are like, I have good penmanship. Right. And so again, being able to know really where you are and then be willing to listen when people tell you both good and bad.
Yeah.
And not take it the defensive way, but to say, oh, let me think about that.
Yeah.
So I warned you earlier that 30 minutes goes fast.
It does. It does. Wow. This was fantastic. Made me start thinking about things again, just how I got here. And
you didn't even have to go into a parking lot with Dawn.
The garage, yeah.
Maybe that's what we should have renamed this, the parking lot with Dawn.
Yeah. Maybe we should meet up in the parking lot next time to record.
Because I've had great conversations in parking garages with Dawn too.
It's that, I'm about to get in my car, a few more things to say. Let's make some plans. You kind of wrap it all up at once because you're about to walk away.
Love it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Amy. Thank you for being willing to answer my game of 100 questions.
It was great. I appreciate getting to know a little more about you. I've talked with Dawn a few times, but Erin, we haven't had that opportunity, so that's been great.
Sounds good. And we will be back in 2 weeks for Dawn and I'll again let Dawn speak at that point about what we learned and kind of gained from this conversation. And I'm sure the answer is a lot.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.